and I'll go ahead and tell you this. I had my son, I told you he was a bassist, and,
Right.
And he was doing a summer music festival in Verbier, Switzerland. And so Karen and we went over to Switzerland, had a nice little vacation, and saw our son. And then coming back, we had to change planes in Charles de Gaulle. And we were late. We were really running late. So we had the tremendous burden of having arrived late. And we had the only seats left were first class on Delta Airlines back to Atlanta from Paris. They had, these great first class seats. And back in the day, everybody didn't have, I don't know. They had the entertainment system with the headphones in first class, and it was really cool. And Working on a Dream, the album, was on the menu of, in-flight listening opportunities. And I listened to that album on the headphones like twice, maybe 3 times on that flight. And I think that's when I was really hooked, because I just listened to that. I guess, I don't know if I was melancholy or what, but I listened to that Kingdom of Day song, which is one of my favorite. I mean, it's never a big hit, but this is my Kingdom of Days. But I just thought about it, the poetry of that, the imagery of it, just the idea of somebody looking back on their life and thinking of it as a kingdom of days.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me in tonight's session is my new friend, Brad Rouse.
Hey,
how are you doing, Brad?
Doing great.
Yeah, Brad is taking time out of his vacation to visit with me. That is dedication.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm in a great place, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, down on the southern end of the Outer Banks.
Oh, that just sounds so nice. That's really good. Well, tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am, I sort of mark myself. I'm 3 years younger than Bruce Springsteen. So that gives you a little bit of my range. I grew up down here in Eastern North Carolina, and grandparents owned a general store and an insurance business, and they were both also tobacco farmers. And I moved away for a while, so I've lived over my time in Virginia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Georgia, and now I'm back actually living in Asheville, North Carolina, on the western part of the state. I'm married. I have 2 sons, and I'm a big Bruce fan. And I'm a new author.
Yeah, I know. We're going to get to that. Yeah, I can't wait to talk a little bit about your book and your change of kind of career. So very, very nice. Well, I always like to start with growing up. So talk about where you already mentioned where you grew up, but was your family into music? Was there a lot of music in the house as you were growing up?
Sure. I really can't say that there was much music in the house growing up. I grew up in a small town of Farmville in Eastern North Carolina, and the family was pretty tight knit. I had a cousin who was 9 years older than me, and he ended up becoming a DJ for a local radio station. And he is how I really got introduced into the music side of things through my cousin. They were pretty close. It was a small town. His mom, my great aunt, was actually my first grade teacher.
Oh, okay.
It was a small town, about 3,000 or 4,000 people. But he was really into the music of his time. this was in the late 50s when I really remember it. He was a big Elvis fan and the Everly Brothers and all of that kind of pop rock or rock, folk rock. I mean, I know of course, he's even today is a big Bruce fan, as well as a fan of a lot of different genres. I went, I was what you call, Jesse, one of the smart kids, I guess. So I was kind of a big reader. I read a lot of books. I was really into science fiction.
Okay.
And, I guess when I first got going into music, I mean, it was the early 60s and the Beatles. Our radio station in Kinston, where I was living when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and they played "I Want to Hold Your Hand" every hour on the hour. And I would come inside from whatever I was doing and turn on the radio and listen to "I Want to Hold Your Hand."
Oh, right.
For like a couple of weeks, the Beatles were so big. And of course, most of the family members didn't quite understand the whole thing about the Beatles.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you had that cousin that, helped influence you. Often when I'm visiting, it'll be an older sibling, that does that reminder, and it kind of.
I was the oldest in my family, so he was probably the equivalent of that for me.
Yeah, and so were you an influence on your younger brothers and sisters?
I kind of think I was, but I don't think I was influenced particularly musically.
Okay.
Although the interesting thing is now, in my adulthood, actually I am probably the least musical in a pretty musical family, mainly because of my wife.
Yeah.
And then my sons. Actually, one of my sons is a professional musician. So.
Oh, nice.
This is much further along in the period of time.
Yeah.
And my oldest son, Jonathan Rouse, is actually the principal bassist for the Austin, Texas Symphony.
Oh, so, nice.
Down your way. And my younger son didn't follow his profession, but he was a scholarship oboe player at the University of North Carolina, and was the principal oboe for the school symphony. And I guess it's a little bit easier to find a professional work as a professional bassist where they have 7 or 8 in an orchestra versus the oboist where there's only one.
Yeah, I bet. That's that you are. I mean, there is a very musical family. Yeah, and my wife is. See, but I don't know. I tried out for the school choir, and I could never carry a tune. I just enjoyed music and enjoying. Yeah. So, how did you discover Bruce?
Well, of course, it's hard not to discover Bruce just listening to the radio and, at some point Muzak and shopping malls, but, you're going to hear some Bruce Springsteen. But I was never really a Bruce fan. I mean, I in high school, I went to a boarding school. We had sort of 2 groups that were competing. We were in an all-male boarding school in Virginia, and we would have these dances, and there would be groups of students who would invite the bands, and so basically it was always a battle between the dominant Southern either beach music or soul music group that would listen to groups like the Tams and the Four Tops or the Michael Jackson a little bit later, that sort of thing. And then there was the people who were really into rock music. So, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Grand Funk Railroad, those kind of guys. And I kind of identified with the rock music crew, but I loved the soul and beach music too. And anyway, it was funny that by the time I got to be a senior in high school, the band's sort of influence of soul music was waning and the rock music was ascendant for a while. Anyway, it was an interesting experience having that. And of course, one of the things you got in an all boys boarding school is the juniors and seniors got to have record players and radios, whereas the freshman and sophomores couldn't.
Right.
So it was an experience of its own. But I really did not become a Raging Bruce fan, let's just say, until I was actually in my later career. I would say the first time I went to a Bruce concert, I just happened to, I was very much into my career, and it was, didn't do a lot of concerts for a long time. And then we got to go to, I just decided, told my wife, hey, Karen, let's go see Bruce. He's playing it. I was in Atlanta at the time. He's playing at Phillips Arena. This was in 2009. They're working on the Dream Tour. And that was my first Bruce experience. And in a real, that was the first time that turned me on to it.
Yeah.
And then I was enthralled. I mean, I loved, of course, we were up in the nosebleed section with the cheaper tickets.
Yeah.
And, but you could still, I had a pair of blue jeans on, I remember, and I was sitting there listening to the rock band, and I could feel my blue jeans vibrating with the sound.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever felt that, but it was just all encompassing sort of, and of course I knew Born to Run and Born in the USA and a few of those songs, but I didn't know any of the songs that the crowd that was there were way more into it than I was.
Yeah.
At the time.
Brad, one of the things I always say on the podcast, right, is I feel like there's two kinds of people. The people that go to their first Bruce show and go, wow, that was long. And then the others that go and say, oh my goodness, this is something that I want to do over and over again. You, as you talked about, right, this is toward, this is in his second act of a career. And you kind of discovered him, at a really interesting point in his career.
Well, I would say, let's see, 2009, I would have been 57.
Yeah.
And he was 60.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things about Bruce is to see him up there in these concerts doing 3 and 4 hour shows without really the music stopping, which nobody does that. And here he is, and he's 3 years older than me.
Right.
It was such an inspiration, when you're at a point in your life that, you're kind of like, okay, well, what's the next act? Am I getting old? Am I going to be old? What's it going to be like? Where am I? And then to see his inspiration, it really has inspired me, I guess I decided right at that point that I really wanted to go see him again, because I was just looking back and I was thinking about this earlier today. And I remember seeing him in Greenville, South Carolina. And I think it was later that same year, I went with my brother, and it just brought me back to my roots in prep school when he got the swinging medallions on stage with him. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you know Swinging Medallions, Double Shot of My Baby's Love.
Sure.
That old, what does he call it? Fraternity rock music. Yes,
right.
And he had them up on stage. And I love that he does that sometimes to get the local band up on the stage and sing a song. So, but anyway, that 2009, I know I went to at least 2 concerts that year. Maybe I went to 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really became a huge Springsteen fan at that point, though. I guess I was, but then and I'll go ahead and tell you this. I had my son, I told you he was a bassist, and and he was doing a summer concert, summer music festival in Verbier, Switzerland.
Okay.
And so Karen and we went over to Switzerland, had a nice little vacation, and saw our son. And then coming back, we had to change planes in Charles de Gaulle, and we were late. We were really running late. So we had the tremendous burden of having arrived late, and we had the only seats left were first class.
Okay.
On Delta Airlines back to Atlanta, and from Paris, and they had these great first class seats. And back in the day, that everybody didn't have, I don't know. They had the entertainment system with the headphones in first class, and it was really cool. And Working on a Dream, the album, was on the menu of in-flight listening opportunities.
Okay.
And I listened to that album on the headphones like twice, maybe 3 times on that flight. And I think that's when I was really hooked, because I just listened to that. I guess, I don't know if I was melancholy or what, but I listened to that Kingdom of Days song, which is one of my favorite. I mean, it's never a big hit, but
yeah,
this is my Kingdom of Days. But I just thought about it, the poetry of that, the imagery of it, just the idea of somebody looking back on their life and thinking of it as a kingdom of days. Yeah,
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that's when I really, it's like, okay, I'll go see Springsteen whenever I can. And I've maybe been to 12, 13 concerts, since I started, and went to Springsteen and Broadway, which was great. But it's not, it's really nothing like the E Street Band concert.
No. So once you kind of got the bug, did you go back and review a lot of his back catalog? Did you download or pick up CDs or, go and listen to other albums?
What I did is I ended up getting Sirius satellite radio. And so I listened to the E Street radio, Channel 20 on Sirius satellite radio, which is all Springsteen all the time.
Absolutely.
And I just listened to that, and it's lovely. You get to hear full concerts. You get to hear, just whatever's coming up, what's new, something new coming up. So that's where I learned. But, listening to that, it took me a while. I mean, I think it was 4 or 5 years before I ever heard Bobby Jean.
Yeah.
That's Springsteen? Oh, that is an incredible song.
How funny. Well, that's great.
And I mean, I downloaded the greatest hits, and then I downloaded the new music, Working on a Dream, Wrecking Ball, and some of that stuff. But I didn't really go back that much. I mean, I just sort of absorbed the rest of the catalog, rest of the stuff, plus a lot of his cover songs and songs with songs with other artists, and which I love some of those too.
What did you think of Western Stars and Letter to You?
Well, I mean, I love everything Springsteen. I mean, what can I say?
Sure.
I love Western Stars. I love Letter to You. I love Ghosts. That is like, and Burning Train. Yeah. Those need to be all on, and all of it was great. I mean, Song for Orphans. It's great.
Yeah.
The poetry's cool. It's,
Yeah, I agree. It was quite a gift, that album. Like, oh my goodness, we've got an E Street Band album, and oh, how amazing! And then, they had the making of documentary on Apple TV, and you got to see the band interacted. Absolutely. It was a really great gift after the issues of 2020. That I just felt like, oh, this is so nice. Where you mentioned you did get to go to Broadway, Where else have you gone and seen him from?
Well, mostly the just within a driving distance of where I happen to be.
Okay.
So I've seen him in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
Virginia Beach, Atlanta, Greensboro, Greenville, South Carolina,
Okay.
Charlotte, Fort Lauderdale, Nashville.
Yeah.
And yeah, Nashville in 2014.
I was at that show. So, yep.
I was in the pit.
Oh, very nice.
I have a picture. Actually, I'm putting this picture that I took from my iPhone. I'm putting it in my book that I'm writing.
Okay.
Of Bruce, just nothing between me and Bruce, and he's kind of jumping over a barrier from the upper stage to the lower stage area. And I literally put my water bottle next to the speakers on the stage.
Yeah. You mentioned, let's talk about it. You in one of the emails you sent me when we found each other on Twitter, and you reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you." And you shared you had a change of careers toward the, where some people may be looking to retire. You decided you wanted to change careers. Talk to me a little bit about that, Brad.
Well, okay. I had two changes of careers.
Okay.
And I know I worked, well, basically I studied economics in school. I went to Yale.
All right.
I got an MBA from North Carolina. I was in business. I did applied economics doing planning work in the utility industry for a consulting firm where we developed software systems that our utility companies could use.
Okay.
And I did that for over 20 years. And it was we were a startup firm. We developed proprietary computer software. I traveled to 49 states and 10 or 15 foreign countries where our clients were all of this. And when I left, I was head of the software division. So it was a very, and I really got deeply into the issues that today are so important, the energy system.
Okay.
I then just really got tired. My sons were at an age where I said, if I keep doing this another 5 years, I'm going to miss having them grow up with me being around, because it was a travel job. You were traveling all the time. And it was a particular point in the career where we had been bought out. So I totally changed my career so I could stay at home. And I became a financial advisor, and I was a certified financial planner.
Okay.
And I did that for 15 years, get me up until not too long after 2000, after the year, let's see, that was it. That was the 90s and into, up until the early 2011, 2012, 2013. And I tell you what happened with me, Jesse, is in my energy career, and I developed in the financial career, I developed a business and had a practice, but I became very concerned about the climate change issue.
Okay.
And I decided that, I could sort of quasi-retire, but I wanted to devote myself to the climate change issue. And so I sold my business and devoted myself full time. And so I've been involved in various aspects of that. I have lobbied in Congress. I've been up to Congress and talked. I've written articles, lots of news, lots of articles, and letters to the editor and that sort of thing. I've also, done I've always been kind of an energy nerd, trying to figure out how I could save energy at home. And, I put solar on 2 homes and done energy upgrades on all of my homes.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in sort of like, what can you do to lower your carbon footprint? But then when I really became concerned about climate, I decided I wanted to do something. I started started doing some work through my church, helping low-income people save on energy. So we go into a home and do some various energy upgrades for the house. And then I started 5 or 6 years ago, I started a nonprofit that does that work. And we've helped over 700 families now in Buncombe County, North Carolina, around Asheville, where, I've been able to get the funding and been involved. And this whole story is what my book is all about.
Okay.
And got very involved in the climate movement and aware of a lot of different things going on. That's sort of been two major career changes, I guess. One, when I got out of the energy industry, and then second, when I kind of got back into it, but as an advocate and not working for the big corporations, which was what we did before, but really working for humanity.
What
to help resolve the climate crisis.
Yeah, you've talked a little bit about that, Brad, but I mean, you mentioned that you've always had that concern and you've always been someone very conscious about, your carbon footprint and how to not be wasteful with energy. But is there anything specific that drove you to make this change, or that, kind of this is almost a calling late in your career?
It is a calling at this point. So
yeah.
Of course, a calling is a really great thing to have. So it's a little bit of it's a good thing to have a calling, because you want your life to mean something, and I hope mine will when everybody looks back on it. You never know.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. But I find it interesting and intriguing. And now writing a book, which is really a product of COVID. I've been working on a book for the last year, which I just wouldn't have had time.
Yeah.
In the past. But and then once you get started and you say, is this going to really be a thing? And then I found a publisher, and so that's going on now. But I think I include a little bit about Springsteen in the book.
Yeah.
What it's meant in my life, and one of the things I quote is from Badlands. Talk about a dream, try to make it real.
Yeah.
And that just speaks to me.
Yeah. That really is a beautiful statement, and it can be used in a lot of different things. And and often I will see someone on Twitter or other social media will talk about like getting to see him on Broadway, or to spending time with a family member, and talk about a dream, try to make it real. So what's the name of the book?
Climate Warrior.
Climate Warrior. And is it out yet, or is it going to be out?
It's not out yet.
Okay.
I will say, if people are interested, I've got a Facebook page category of book, and it's Climate Warrior is the Facebook page. On Twitter, it's Climate Warrior Author.
Yeah.
And I guess on Instagram, I'm learning from my publisher that I need to get with Gen Z and start to be more of an Instagrammer. But
okay.
I do have I think it's the same as Facebook, Climate Warrior on Instagram, which if somebody wants to look at it there.
Yeah, and I will include those links in the show notes.
Sure.
For them to check on it.
Brad Rouse. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, so people can reach out. I guess to sell my book, being sort of an unknown person, really.
Yeah.
I just gotta hope there's some luck and somebody picks it up and spreads the word and gets it out there, because I'm not one of these famous authors. A lot of books about climate change right now. It's a big subject. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
I'd love my publisher said, well, you just need to tag Springsteen on every post that you make about your book. And I'm like, I don't know. People really feel a while before they make that connection.
Yeah.
Um,
Did the it it does concern me. I'm 62. I live here in Texas, and somebody asked the other day, or on social media, you know, are any of you blue bubbles in a red area? And I'm like, I am a very small blue bubble in a very red state. It
yeah.
is it the best thing I ever heard is Penn Jillette talked about, from Penn and Teller. He said, if we make the air cleaner, even if greenhouse wasn't effect, even if there wasn't a client thing, isn't clean air better? I mean, isn't
Sure.
clean water better? Even if you don't believe anything at all, the science, and you don't believe there's any of this climate crisis, but isn't having a cleaner area a good thing? And
Well, it isn't not having to mine and drill for a limited supply of coal and oil better? Isn't not being dependent on the sheiks and sultans in Arabia better
yeah,
than what we are today?
and you know,
Think about our wars and how many wars were fought, maybe not explicitly, but in the background. Iraq, Afghanistan,
yeah,
maybe not explicitly about oil, even though, who wanted to have us go grab the oil before we got out of Iraq. It's really been a kind of about oil. I mean, we needed to keep those areas in our, we needed to put our fingerprint there as unsuccessfully as we've been in order to keep the oil flowing.
yeah.
So we do what we need to do on a renewable energy and the energy future, and we won't have that problem. It'll be behind us.
And
it's really a beautiful future that we could have. I mean, talk about a dream,
yeah.
It's a beautiful future we could have, whether greenhouse gases are causing climate change, which they are, or not.
Yeah. And what frustrates me is that we are fighting so much anti-science nowadays, Brad. This past winter we had this unbelievable, ice storms and this freezing weather in the Dallas, not just Dallas, but a lot of Texas.
I was on the phone a lot with my son in Austin.
Yeah. And I had someone come up to me and the power grid just wasn't read. It wasn't built for this kind of cold. And I had someone I work with like, well, it's the whole, if we had just done oil and if we had not tried to do all this with air, with wind or solar, we wouldn't have had this problem. And I'm like, no,
not true.
The science says, I mean, there's, and I don't know the percentage correctly, you may know, but less than like 5% of the power for this state comes from something besides, oil and gas. That's just not true, but it fits.
It was mismanagement.
Yes.
In Texas. I mean, just the fact that Texas doesn't want to tie its grid to the east and to the west when Texas is in a perfect opportunity to be trading power to the east and to the west boggles my mind. But if Texas had been intertied with California and with the Georgia, they would have not had the problem if they'd had transmission that was running between the two.
Yeah.
The three.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even worse. I mean, the fact that they just didn't plan. I mean, for this kind of thing, and relied too much on the free market, honestly, and not enough on understanding the way outside things could happen. I mean, and of course, nobody anticipated the event in Texas, but I imagine it will happen. I mean, that was caused by climate change. even though it was cold. I mean, it was a situation, let's just say, made worse by climate change.
Well, and absolutely, Brad, and I don't think we've done anything to fix it. I don't want to get into too much politics, but it is just there's a reluctance to embrace. You're right. Texas has this independent thing that's just silly. And you would, after this is having this, it would be, why would you not support this infrastructure? And why would you not, like, okay, we need to make changes to do this. But there's a different agenda going on, and it can be very frustrating to someone who is, a layperson, or just someone who's just trying to do the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
What else do you, so the book telling your story, and what else do you cover in it?
Well, basically, it's, talk about a dream, try to make it real. Okay.
Yeah.
So I talk about my vision, my dream.
Yeah.
For a future where there are no fossil fuels used in our energy system.
Yeah.
And then I explore, using some of my economics and modeling background from my career in the energy industry, some very, what I try to be is that there are studies out there which do what I'm trying to do in the book, but I'm trying to make it more readable.
Okay.
To the layman. I don't know if it is or not, but because there's a certain amount of numbers you got to show. You got to show some tables and some graphs, no matter what you do. But I tried, the people who've gone into detail that have shown that, in fact, we can power the country without using fossil fuels have done very extensive modeling, because nobody's ever actually done it on a grid the size of the United States. I mean, nobody's ever actually done it. So what you have to do is you have to use models and simulate what it would look like.
Yeah.
And there've been very robust simulations that show that we can do it. I just try to, one of the things that I determine, which is confirmed by the much more detailed studies, is that we got to be building solar and wind about 5 times faster than we're building it right now, if we're going to get to, Biden's goal by 2030 of, 50% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. So tough, it's a tough, big challenge, a lot of opportunity, huge opportunity.
Yeah.
In terms of jobs and business opportunities and money to be made. And presumably there's also, unfortunately, going to be money to be lost in other industries. But I write a lot about that. And then I write about some other things that I've done in the local area, like this nonprofit I started, and, try to just use my own experience as an example for people who might be interested in stepping up and participating in this, really, I think, a generational thing that we've got going on, which is the energy transition. I mean, it's really one of the really exciting things that you could be part of. So, and I'd love to hear Bruce expand on that and become part of that movement too. And some of the things he says. So maybe he will. Love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, he is, for people who say, well, I can't believe he's gone political. He's been political his whole career. I mean, from the middle 80s, he is, once he started getting successful and started reading and doing, he's always been very active about helping, as he puts it, right, the gap between the American dream and the American reality.
There you go.
And so absolutely. So do you know when the book's going to be published?
Well, we're hoping for by the end of the year.
Okay.
So it's I feel like I'm done, but I know the publisher's not done.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
That's what he's got to do.
Okay.
Oh, we've got a great cover. I could share with you the cover.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be
uh,
great. Yeah, I'll post that when I send this out, and
it,
that'll be good.
it's
Yeah.
just an image that I love. That's I just worked with the publisher who's a graphic design. Got a lot of graphic design background. I came up with this cover, and it's a sort of a symbolic kind of. Somebody said it's kind of a Japanese style image, but it's good. And the book's got, will have pictures in it, and I've got pictures of me when I was 4 years old. So it's also a personal story of just how did this guy who was a businessman who worked with the utility industry and then advised wealthy, was a financial advisor, how did he end up devoting himself full time to the climate issue and not get paid for it?
Yeah, exactly. So back to Bruce a little bit. When are there favorite albums and songs that kind of speak to you, that mean a lot to you?
Yeah.
Versus the Working on a Dream, right?
Yeah, working on Dream, Kingdom of Days, and working on Dream. I mean, I love those songs. I can't say that they're great songs, but I mean, I mentioned I like Ghosts and Burning Train, but and then in terms of what I talk about the Rising and Badlands in the book. Youngstown, I just love Youngstown. I love just stuff like that. Things that really talk about people, and but I would say that's one of my favorite. Downbound Train.
Yeah.
I love a couple of songs that he's done, covers that he's done, two in particular. One, the free.
Hang on, Brad, I've lost you. Can you hear me? Brad, can you hear me? Because I can't hear you.
How about now?
Now I can. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So you said last Downbound Train. Continuing there.
Downbound Train. Well, a couple that he's done with covers. That are covers. Chimes of Freedom.
Yeah.
Berlin, and then he did it, and I think and it's just inspiring. Of course, I love the Byrds. He did a song live with Roger McGuinn, Turn, Turn, Turn.
Yeah.
Just you listen to that and Turn, Turn, Turn. I always love that song, and the playing it with that rock guitar sound. Goes to Tom Joad with Tom Morello.
Yeah.
That he played that at Nashville, if you remember.
Sure.
That's an incredible song.
Yeah.
Silly song that I really love is Leap of Faith.
Yeah, that is a great song.
So you listen to the words and realize what it's really about. It's really kind of fun. Bobby Jean. I mean, I love just that idea of singing the song, remembering Bobby Jean.
That friendship, right?
Yeah, that friendship, the old girlfriend, whatever it was. And of course, Under Road. Radio Nowhere is a great song.
It really is. We're all hoping that we get a tour in 2021 or 2022. Are there songs you are hoping to hear, obviously besides Western Stars and Letter to You, but are there other songs that you're going, man, I still want to hear this one live?
Well, the two that I mentioned, Chimes of Freedom and Turn, Turn, Turn.
Yeah.
I've never heard those live. They're covers. So, you got to play with it. I think otherwise, I mean.
That's good.
Just The Youngstown, I haven't heard many times, and I want to hear that.
All right.
It doesn't matter. Whatever he comes up with, it'll be great.
Yeah. So what do you, we all are trying to do better things. And I'm just curious, do you have advice for us just as we try to, do better? Do you have kind of things what we can do? What do you suggest?
I just find what inspires you and what motivates you and gives you energy.
Yeah.
And be proactive. Don't waste your time waiting.
Yeah.
It's time to stand up and make a difference.
Yeah.
And
well said.
And it can kind of be a dance in a way. I mean, it doesn't have to be like one thing and only do one thing.
Yeah.
There's yourself, there's your education, there's your knowledge. Learn, talk about the issues that are important to you. I mean, certainly on climate change, learn about climate change because that affects all of us. And make a difference in your own little sphere. I mean, what you buy, how you use energy, what you drive.
Yeah.
All of those things can make a huge difference. But then in your local community, there are so many ways to make a difference. I mean, volunteer, find some things to volunteer. You'll learn so much. Volunteer in the low income space. I find people who volunteer, they learn so much about the other half. I mean, we just live in our own little world. So get out there and mix it up a little bit. And then also don't be afraid to think about the big issues, make known your opinion to the people in charge at the state and national level. And that's what democracy is all about. If you don't, they're going to hear from somebody who some interest is paying that person to talk to your representative on a regular basis and shower gifts or contributions or whatever. But they'll listen to you too if you're a constituent.
Well said, Brian. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't?
Oh, wait, you were going to ask me about Mary, but
that is coming up next. Yeah, that is coming up next.
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably.
I always ask that because I had a guest once who at the end of the podcast said, we've finished recording, and after I turned off the recorder, he said, "Oh, and next time I should tell you about the time I got drunk with the E Street Band." I'm like, "What? How did you not lead with that story?" So
that would be a good story to that would be a good story to have. I don't know if I have any stories like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was thinking at first when you were talking about, from Paris first class, that you ended up running into a member of the E Street Band. That's where I thought you were going to go.
I almost felt like I did, but I just listened.
Yeah, I bet. That's amazing. Yeah.
And I will say one other thing you didn't ask about, but the movie Blinded by the Light.
Yes.
For your viewers who have not seen that movie, go see that movie because it is just wonderful.
It really was a beautiful film about being passionate about, and not just, even if you're not a Bruce fan, just the passion and finding that and how it makes a difference in your life. I agree. It's just really a beautiful film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. I'm going to have, I have a couple of people who are not Springsteen fans, but watched Western Stars, and they're going to join me hopefully this month and just talk about it from a pure movie perspective. They are not Springsteen fans. They just went in because I asked them to, and they're going to talk to me about the movie from just a fresh movie perspective. So I'm looking forward to hearing their
pretty
thoughts.
cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
All right. So if you were a friend of Brad's, I thank you for listening. I am so glad
Sure.
you joined us. So I end every episode with the Mary question. Now, what the Mary question is Jason Armstrong, who is an honors English teacher, recently retired from the Philadelphia area. While he was teaching, every year he would have his honors English class, his seniors, take 2 days out of their curriculum and study Thunder Road as a poem. They would look at the imagery, they would talk about the lyrics, they would talk about the themes, they would compare it to Robert Frost poems and other poems. And then at the end of the 2 days, Jay looks at his class and says, "Does Mary get in the car?" So, Brad, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
And I think my answer is yes, she does.
Okay.
Because, that's just the story that works, is saying yes.
Yes.
It's saying yes to the future, and it's saying yes to the opportunity. It's taking a leap of faith. It's following the dream and trying to make it real.
Yeah.
So, and how could you not, after those lyrics, Bruce, the guy saying those lyrics to Mary,
yeah,
how could she not? She would have to.
Yeah.
There would be no other option.
Yeah. Well said, sir. Well said. All right.
You should do a poll online and see what happens on that.
Well, about 60% of my guests say yes, and about 40% say no.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm sure they have their good reasons.
Absolutely. So, Brad, thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited about the book, and Climate Warrior is hopefully going to be out by the end of the year. Reach out to me once it's published. And
I'll let you know. I mean, if people want to get on a list to be notified when they get a copy, and they can get a signed copy from me.
Okay.
Just message me, put a note on the website, send me an email, send me a Instagram a message, and I'll just send me an email an email address, and I'll follow up with them.
Yeah, and your Twitter handle is @CWarrior_author, correct?
I think it's @Climate Warrior Author. That's my Twitter. My at @CWarrior_author.
Yes. So follow him there. I will have the links to not only his personal Facebook, but also his Client Warrior book Facebook page. So go there, follow up. I wish you continued success, sir. I appreciate the fact that you joined me, and thank you for doing the good work that you're doing. It is important work, and I applaud you for it, and I'm so glad you're doing it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Listeners, you please go get vaccinated. Go continue to be safe. Let's wear our masks. Let's remember to social distance. Let's be good to each other, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. Brad, thank you. Listeners, thank you. We will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter @setlustingbruce, and my personal Twitter is @JesseJacksonDFW. We have a website, www.setlustingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts, as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Lusting Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference. You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.